Today I'm going to show you how I painted this easy rose in watercolor. So let's get started. A couple weeks ago I've been asking you to give me feedback on what you'd like to see me paint. And Little Lily suggested I paint a rose on my channel, so I am painting this based on her suggestion. Thank you, Little Lily. And now I will show you how I painted it step by step. I start by sketching my reference photo, and for a complex rose, I like to start in the middle with the small sections and work my way outwards. I was just looking at my laptop screen in front of me as I sketched it, and I didn't get the proportions or petals exact, but that's okay if it's not perfect. I'm drawing this on a watercolor block by Canson, and I haven't used this paper before, but I ordered it because it was really affordable and I wanted to see if I could use it for practice and demonstrations like this. It turns out this paper does not behave like the Arches or Fabriano paper that I'm used to, but it's not terrible, at least for this kind of subject. I will tell you more of my thoughts about it as we get into the painting. Now I'm getting ready to paint, so I'm getting my Meeden watercolor travel palette ready, my water and towel, and my favorite black velvet brushes. I will link to all the supplies I use in the video description. So I'm going to paint this with just 3 colors, and I start with Opera Pink. I'm getting a puddle in the tray, not too thin and not too thick, and swirling it around to make sure there aren't little lumps or granules, since I just reconstituted this from dried out pigment. This will be for the lightest pink tones in the painting. The next color is Quinacridone Rose, which I first mixed with some Opera, but as I went I really used just the Quinacridone Rose for the midtones. This is a very pretty and transparent, cool rosy red. For the deepest shadows, I mixed the rose with Phthalo Blue, which is a cool blue, and this made a really vibrant, cool, transparent purple. Once my colors were mixed and ready, I tested them on a piece of paper to double check how they would look on the painting. I'm painting the entire rose with the Opera color for a base layer, since this is the lightest color. I'm already noticing that the color kind of sits on top of the paper for a while and kind of behaves more like a hot press paper since the color is not very even. I did have some struggles with this paper since the washes were not very smooth, but there is one thing I really did like about this paper, and I will show you why at the end of the video. While the rose was still wet, I decided to add a splatter texture on the background, just tapping that Opera color on my brush against my other brush to get it to splatter all around. I did not like the little droplets on the rose, so I made sure to smooth them out while the paper was still wet. Once the paper was dry, I painted the rose petal by petal using the mid-tone rose color for the deeper color of the shadow. I pre-wet the petal first, then dropped in the deeper color. As I mentioned, I realized about this paper that the original color lifts off quite easily, which really makes it difficult to layer or glaze colors the way I'm used to, but I decided just to keep going and experiment and just went with this more impressionistic style of rose, working within the limitations of the paper. Here I'm skipping over to this petal. I don't want to paint any 2 petals that are adjacent to each other, since I want to keep each wet area self-contained so it doesn't bleed into the next area. So I will hop around from petal to petal, making sure that it's not touching anything else that's wet. Here again I pre-wet the petal, then dropped in that rose color towards the base, which is the shadowy area, and just gently extending it out to blend into the lighter color as well as I could given the fact that the paper doesn't allow for very smooth transitions. Some of the petals towards the front have deeper shadows, and I just went in right away with that deep purple color and added quinacridone rose on top of it to make the color shifts more cohesive. You can see I'm testing this petal to see if it has dried, and it's still very wet, so I can still easily go in and fix it with my brush. Almost all of these petals are dark at the base and light at the tips, so I'm just repeating that same process, jumping around the flower and painting petal by petal. This large petal in the very front is deepest in shadow, so I'm going to go in right away with just that deep purple and make it fairly thick and dark. I'm trying to pre-wet it without lifting up too much of that under layer of paint, which is tricky. Then I go in with that dark purple. Then a thick mix of that mid-tone red right next to it. I'm going to speed up this footage shortly. I went around and deepened some of those shadow areas with an even thicker mix of that dark purple to really give it some dimension and contrast. Once I get the darks where I want them, at this point I would normally want to glaze a unifying color over the entire rose with a bright pink, but with this paper I think it would just lift everything up, so I will leave it like this for now as I paint the stem and background. For the stem, I put some Hansa yellow in my mixing area, which is a bright, cool yellow, and mixed it with phthalo blue for a bright spring green, which I neutralized with my purple mixture, and I painted this on the stem. I used purple on the left side to deepen the shadow area, and added some of that yellow to bring back a little green on the right side. I want to keep the colors cohesive for this painting, and I don't want the background to dominate the subject, so I will use the same colors in the background that I used on the rest of the flower. I pre-wet section by section, getting my wet brush right up to the edge of the petals, and I start here with purple and add some of the leftover neutral green, then I add a little bit more phthalo blue to intensify some of that color slightly. Then I move on to the next section and do some more mixing between the green and purple and letting them mix and neutralize. I'm taking advantage of what the paper lets me do, which creates a nice abstract splashy effect. Now while the paper is wet, I'm spattering a darker concentration of purple in those wet areas in the background, and I'm protecting the flower with my scrap paper. Here on the bottom it's too dark, so I use my wet brush and just soften that effect. And these droplets here are too much in a straight line, so I adjust them also using my damp brush. Next, I used my stiff angle brush to lift some highlights from the petals, and this is one thing that I really did like about this paper. Since the pigment more or less sits on top of the paper, it was really easy to lift the pink where I wanted the most contrast. I had a lot of fun painting this rose, and I hope you enjoyed following along with me. I have gotten several suggestions for future paintings, and I am working my way down the list. If there's anything that you'd like to see me paint, please leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to learn more from me about watercolor painting, subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so you can be aware when a new video is uploaded. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye!